All right, good day, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so today we're going to be doing the bouncing ball tutorial, and we're going to be using either Tahoma 2D or Opentoonz as our animation software for this. Either will work. They're very similar in their look and overall operation. Just a slight change with regards to the placement of some of the icons and items, but overall it will both be the same for the procedure. All right, so today we're going to be looking on the bouncing ball. And particularly while we're looking on the bouncing ball, we're going to be focusing on some of the principles of animation, namely looking at arcs, adjusting our timing and spacing. We're looking at squash and stretch. And later on, we'll even look at the whole impact of volume, which will basically be seen in the weight of the ball with how high it bounces. It tells you whether or not the object is dense or bouncy. So let's get started. So we're going to be creating the bouncing ball going up and down. So this will be our lineup, and we'll be doing it free form by hand. So I won't be using a regular shape, but just to get us started as we go forward. All right, are you ready? Let's head on over to our software. So I've already downloaded Opentoonz from the website and also Tahoma 2D. Today's tutorial, we're going to be using Tahoma 2D for our setup. Now, just like Tahoma, Opentoonz will start with this dialog box asking you to do your initial setup that you'll need to do your work. All right, now by default, both Tahoma and OpenD save their work in the sandbox projects file. And for us, we can leave that there. We just need to know, look for it later. And our file would require a name. And seeing as though we're going to be doing 2 bouncing ball activities, I'd allow for that to go. All right, the next thing that we're going to be doing is working with our frames. Now, currently, it is going to take 24 frames per second for this animation. Now, we're not going to have 24 drawings fully for this. So at 24 frames per second, it would move by rather quickly. So we're going to actually slow it down. So we're going to cut the frame rate in half, more limited, and we're going to go with 12 frames per second. I am going to leave the default settings here for the scene, but we can actually set our scene for any dimension that we want. So currently it is at 1080p. We could have adjusted it to 720 or any other requisite value that we would have found useful. All right, and when we're finished, we're going to hit create scene. All right, now this is our interface that we have for Tahoma. At the top right, we have different shelves. And what the shelf basically does is give you a slight modification to the arrangement of the workspace. So it depends on what type of animation you're doing. You have some preset shelves that you can work with that helps you to get started. All right, now this section right here, and if it's not showing for you, you can always come back to panels and bring it up. But this section right here is our viewer, and our viewer represents our stage as well as our camera view. On the left, immediate left, we have in Tahoma, it's on our immediate left, we have our palette and style editor. And to the left of that, we have our toolbar. To the base of the workspace, we have our timeline, which moves from left to right. And we're going to add layers or levels, which is the term used in Tahoma as we work. So we're going to be creating our bouncing ball. So let's get started. First thing, we need to create a level to represent our floor. And this is really just a guide so that we know where our floor is that we want to be shown throughout the animation. Otherwise, you could also eyeball it. So even if you don't want to have the floor, that's also fine. We just need to judge where it is that we want it to be. Now, to create a level, there are 2 ways in which you can do this. You have icons right here that tell you the name of the level that you want to create. So you can go new vector level, and vectors are shape tools. Raster level, which is for drawing, and Opentoonz has, and Tahoma has 2 drawing levels. So you can either use new raster or smart raster. We're going to actually work with the new raster level. The other way in which you can do this, you can click add new level. And when you go to the add new level now, you can set the type to what type of level that you would like. So we're going to create our new level. You can also rename the levels by double clicking on the name so that you can have it adjusted to your liking. So I'm going to call this one ground. And on this, I am actually going to create the ground for animation. So I'm just going to use the brush as my guide. And color is black. And we're just going to make a rough line going across to represent the area for our ground. So what this is my horizontal line. So I'm going to have the ball hit somewhere around here, representing my ground, or I could actually make it bounce on the line. Depends on the look that we actually going for. All right, so this would represent the ground, and I'm not going to want anything else done to the ground. So I'm going to leave this layer by itself, and I'm going to create a new level. I will use the same raster level, and I am going to call this one bouncing ball. And on this, we're going to actually create our bouncing ball. Now let's go back to our reference. Now what you're going to see is that we're going to be going with the ball starting from a high position and going down. And what you will notice is that the shape of the ball changes from a circular to an oval shape as it increases. And then when it hits the ground, it squashes out again, oval, and then recoils. So we're going to be going through roughly this for our bouncing ball. All right, so let's get started. So always make sure that you're on the appropriate level that you want to be drawing on. So you always check, make sure that you're on the level and on the frame that you want. So we're going to be on the bouncing ball level, frame 1. So that is selected. And just so that I can have a different color for the ball from the ground, I am going to add a new color palette. By default, when you click add, it gives you the same color as before, and then you can look around for a new color. So I'm going to go with blue, and we're just going to draw the position of the first ball. And don't worry about the look, whether or not it's perfect. We really just want to get you guys focused on the timing and the changes that goes on. All right, so on frame 1, which is our first drawing, we have the ball at its top position. All right, now we can check to make sure that we drew it on the right layer. We can look back over here. So we have some positions right here that helps us to identify what's going on. One of this is visibility. So you can actually turn on and off the visibility and the camera view of each layer. Now, the one in the middle turns on and off what you can see on your camera view, which is the stage. The one to the far left, the eye, this gives you the visibility for export. So when you export your video at the end, if this is off, then whatever it is that you have will not be shown when you export. All right, so let me just turn them on. So I just made sure that my ball is on the appropriate layer. All right, so the next step that we're going to do now is to adjust, create a new ball in its new position. So we're going to go over to the next frame. Hold on, I don't see the ball anymore. All right, so how am I going to judge it if I'm not seeing the previous one to be able to have an idea of where to do this? So to fix this, if you see this little icon right here, this red and green, this is what we call onion skin. And you can double click on it to activate it, or right click, activate onion skin. And what the onion skin does, it shows you a preview of where your previous area was. Later on too, you can also turn it on if you come to show the onion skin for those in front. So you can judge it based on a layer behind and a layer in front. But for now, we just want to see where we have been. So I'm just going to leave the one behind as our guide. All right, so now we're going to redraw the second ball. Now for the second ball, we want to work with the principle of easing in. So for easing in, we want to create the ball probably about halfway the first. So what this will do is that When objects are closer together in animation, it moves slower. So that's easing. If you make the drawings further away from each other, then it moves faster. So if you want something to move slower, make the distance between each movement smaller. If you want to appear to move faster for the same time, you make the distance bigger. All right, so this was the first one. Now, for the guide for easing in is that you want to have an idea. It's generally going to expand the distance in how it's going to go. So the first one was about halfway. So let's make one probably just touching the base of the previous one. Because what happens is that it's going to be picking up momentum as it goes. So if we look on it now from frames 1, 2, 3, it's starting to pick up momentum as it goes down. All right, so let's go to the new level. And please remember, guys, every time add a new frame for a new drawing. So it's going to speed up a little bit more. Now, as it speeds up, so the shape of the ball is going to slowly start to change. So it's not going to look as circular, and it's going to slowly start to look a little bit more oblong. All right. Now, what I'm noticing is that I'm not seeing my ground anymore. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to extend the ground so I can have it as my guide. So I'm going to click and drag it out a few frames just so that we have it as a guide. So wherever we click, we can see where we are in relation to the ground. All right, so continuing. So as it speeds up, it's going to start to get more elongated. And then it's going to reach its maximum elongation and speed just when it hits the ground. So I'm going to make it hit the ground right around here. All right, now let's say that I had drawn it and it's a little bit off. I can actually readjust my placement by coming to the selection tool. Now, the selection tool has different options. You have rectangle and freehand, which are the ones I use more. Polyline you can also use, but what it does, it gives you a shape around the object you want to select. And it allows you to then move it. Freehand just means that you draw it around the shape itself. All right, so now we have the ball hitting the ground. And just as it's about to hit now, it's going to transfer its energy. So it's going to move from this squash, from the stretch position into a squash position. And please remember, guys, in animation, even though it's not a focus on this one, but one of the key things with animation is exaggeration. So you have to give it a little extra oomph to get that look. So it's going to go from a squash from a stretch to a squash. So it's going to be squashed out. All right, great. So next level now, we're going to have it recoil. So let's give this a little extension more on the ground. So it's going to recoil. And this is because of physics. So impacts can hit the ground, squash, and it's going to recoil with a little bit more power. So it's going to come up probably a little bit higher than where the previous ball was. It has the most energy on its recoil. But then what's going to happen is, because it's hit the ground, it will lose some of its energy. So it's not going to go up as far as it did the first came from originally. So you're going to find that it's going to slowly start to slow down as it reaches about halfway up, give or take. So what you're going to have is that the ball now is going to the ease out. All right, I think I made this a little too much to the right, so let's just bring it over a little bit more. The ball is going to slowly ease out, which is slowing down. So similar to the easing, it's going to slow down. So you're going to start to have overlapping as it goes. And then it's slowly going to start to retrace and come back down. All right, now you'll also notice that as I do my drawings, I'm not too worried initially about the shape because this is more of a rough look for where the items are going to be. And later on, when we start looking on vector shapes, we will actually expand on that a little bit more. Now, this time when it hits the ground, it's still going to be elongated, but it may not be as elongated as it was before because it will have a little bit less energy than it did the previous time. All right, let me just adjust this. All right, so I actually want to see where the previous ground hit was, so I can actually extend the onion skin so I can see further back. All right, so it hit around here. And then you can always turn them back off or show the range for how long. So this gives you a range of how many frames back or forth you're allowed to hit. And if I want it to be stretched a little bit more, I can also drag this up and down to help with the shape. So it won't be as elongated as it was before. And it also won't be as squashed as it was before because it now has less energy than it did previously. And then this is going to come back up. And because it has less energy, it's going to recoil. Oops, I forgot to add a new layer. So let me just undo. Undo, you can go to edit, undo. Shortcut for that is Control Z. Always remember to put your drawings on a new layer. So it's going to recoil a lot sooner this time. And even then I could bring this down. So this helps us now with our timing. I really is just judging where it is in relation and seeing how it works. So we're about here. Bring it back down. Time it's going to hit the ground, it's going to be a little bit more rounded. Squash won't be as much either. Still be more rounded. I'm going to come up a little bit. In fact, I think the previous one I could actually squash the scene a little bit, bring the scene a little bit more. So let me just step back and adjust it. So even though it's going to be squashed, it won't be as squashed as it was in previous. All right, so I'm not going to let this second bounce be as high, so it's going to round out a lot quicker. And it's going to start to drop. And this time I'm just going to make it drop and bounce off screen. All right, so now that we have it around here, give it a test. So let's hit our play button. All right, not looking bad, not looking bad. All right, so this will be the guide for a bouncing ball. Now, at this point now, we'd actually look through and see how it looks, the feel, and we'll go back through and make our adjustment. So this is us now testing it out. So we can now go back through, we can look at it in relation to each position. If I want to see what it's like with the ones ahead, I can turn on the pre for the onion skin and that shows in green. So now I can test it for the timing to see how it fits with the timing charts. And if it is that we like it and it looks good, then that's it. So I'm going to leave this at it. And I did like the freehand draw. I gave the ball a little bit of appeal, a little bit of whimsy about it. So this will be our bouncing ball going through. So now that we have our work, we need to save it. So the first thing we're going to do is File, Save, and hit Save All. It says your scenes and all those in locations that we told it, which was sandbox in the beginning. And now the most important part for us is we want to show this off. Or you're going to be able to upload this now to YouTube so you can send this to me. So what you're going to do, you're going to render. So the term for exporting it for video purposes would be render. So let's go to render. Now they do have a fast MP4 option that works on Tahoma to some extent, as it doesn't work on Opentoonz. But either way, what I want you guys to do first, before you even do any of these fast render options, you need to set your render options. In fact, I encourage everybody, go through the render settings first and make sure that your render is set appropriately before you actually render. So we're going to go through or open our render settings, and let's take a look at our settings. So it's going to ask us for our file name, where we want to save it. So in the sandbox file, there's a subfolder called outputs. So we can tell it to save there. It's already the name of the file that we want. And then I will now look to create it as a video format file. Now, TIF is an image format, so it's going to give us a lot of still images, which is fine. We got still images when we did our stop motion activity, where it's a ton of still images that you put together in a software to have it done. But if you don't want to carry to another software to put it together, then we need to export as a video. So we need to look for our video export options. Oh, there are two types of video export options available. Well, in for most, in Tahoma, I'm seeing 3 now. So AVI is the export option. You'll find this one in Opentoonz as well. What you're not going to find in Opentoonz right now is MOV and MP4, which are 2 other video format files. Now, most people prefer MP4 because it's a smaller file size than AVI or MOV, but they both work as video files as well. So if whichever one of these is an option for you, AVI, MOV, or MP4, that will be your exports. So we'll select our file type, and then we tell it where to save. And then when we have that now, we go to render. And it will create our video and have it saved in that location. All right, so now that we've done this as a class activity, we are going to up our challenge. And I'm going to ask you guys now to take it on as a challenge, and we're going to go across the room. So here's your reference file to go across the room. So we're going to start off with the ease in, and I personally like to start with a little bit closer with the overlap, but for experience of time, we'll have the first 2 close. So that's the ease, a little bit slower. The distance between second and third will be a little bit more. Between third and fourth, it expands a little bit. Then it's going to expand between fourth and fifth. And you'll also notice the shape change from oval to elongated to more elongated to its maximum elongation just before hitting the ground. Switch to a squash, then recoils, comes up. As it goes to the top or the highest point of the bounce and loses energy, it gets more circular. It also eases out, so it starts to have overlap. Then it speeds up again as it starts to come back down, hit the ground, and it repeats. And you can continue until it rolls off screen if you so like. So this is your challenge. You're going to create a bouncing ball across the room. When you're finished, you're going to upload it to YouTube as usual, or requirement will be either unlisted or as a public video, and then you will submit the link in the appropriate locations. All right, thank you guys. Have fun animating.